All right, welcome in here, coast to coast. Steven Strom alongside TJ Savara. We'll preview three things leading up to our podcast. About a bunch of stuff to get into. Not really any NBA for you today, but it's in the podcast. We're going to go NFL really today. So let's start with number one, and that is Joe Flacco. Flacco traded to Denver for a fourth-round pick from the Ravens. Tej, does this make any sense? What were your first thoughts on Flacco to the Broncos?
It makes a lot of sense for the Ravens. I like what they're doing with their organization. They're moving on from Flacco, something the Giants should have done with Eli a long time ago.
Very true.
You're getting rid of your Super Bowl quarterback. You're understanding that you have a young quarterback in Lamar Jackson who you're going to move forward with. You have a good defense with a lot of good young players on the defense and an elite head coach in the league. So moving on from Flacco, for the Ravens standpoint, I loved it. For the Broncos standpoint, I absolutely hated it.
Me too.
You become the second highest paid quarterback room in the league with Flacco and Keenum. Both of them, Flacco making $20 million a year and now Keenum making $10 million a year. Mm-hmm. You're going to have two guys that are $30 million a year combined. That's the second highest paid in the league. Flacco has been absolutely terrible. They gave up a fourth-round pick for them in today's NFL draft. That could be a good pick, so I hated it for the Broncos.
And dead last in a lot of those categories, if you want to read them real quick. Yeah, he has not been a very good quarterback these last few years.
Joe Flacco, in the last 5 years, not like it's the last year, it's the last 5 years, he's dead last in yards per attempt. So that narrative that he's a deep ball thrower and he slings it all the time, it's not true.
Yes.
He's dead last in yards per attempt. He's dead last in quarterback rating, passer rating, that's the measurement of a quarterback. He's dead last. And touchdown to interception ratio. So he's not even a game
pretty important statistics.
It's not even like he's a game manager where he controls the game and takes care of the ball. No, he has more interceptions to touchdown than any quarterback in the entire league over the last 5 years. So.
I thought it was a desperate move, and I agree with you 100%. I thought it was a desperate move for the Broncos. You have a guy in Case Keenum. If you're going to sign into 2 years, I mean, that's not very long. He didn't have a horrible year, as we discussed on the podcast. It was like 18 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. I mean, he wasn't the reason why they didn't make the playoffs, in my opinion. So it's just kind of puzzling to me. Another thing I think, you have the 10th overall pick. Why not go for a Drew Lock or a quarterback or a Kyler Murray or something like that? If your move is to, get a quarterback, you're not in a win-now stage. And we talked about the division, too.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything in that division with the Chiefs and Chargers.
No, the Chiefs and the Chargers, their rosters are just way better than the Broncos rosters. Even though the Broncos have some players on defense and they have young, promising running back in Phillip Lindsay, they traded away Demaryius Thomas, who's been their number one receiver for years now. Emmanuel Sanders is a nice player, but he's not a number one wide receiver. Just to get into John Elway real quick.
Yeah, let's segue to John Elway.
Segue to John Elway. Just how terrible he has really been. And we talked about this on the podcast. He'll never be fired because he is such a legend for that organization.
They asked him just to step down.
The quarterbacks that Elway has had since Peyton Manning has retired after they won the Super Bowl, here's the list of the quarterbacks that have played for the Broncos.
Yeah, then he's brought in and drafted.
He took Paxton Lynch in the first round, who never played a significant snap for them. He signed Case Keenum, who we just said, to a 2-year deal, who now he just replaced by...
Can't blame him for signing him after the year.
Can't blame it, but I could blame him for then signing Joe Flacco while Case still has years on his deal, and you still have to pay him. And now we just said Flacco's been the worst statistical quarterback in the league for years now.
Yes.
He had Trevor Siemian, who beat out his first-round pick in Paxton Lynch, who has now got traded to your Vikings.
Yep, back up.
And he signed Brock Osweiler 2 times. He offered him $15 million a year after the first stint, and he got bailed out by the Texans offering Brock way more money. So he was terrible in Houston, got traded to Cleveland. He was terrible in Cleveland, got cut, and then Elway went out and got him again. So Elway has no track record of being able to evaluate the quarterback position, and it's weird to say that because he is such a great quarterback, and he's a legend, and he's such a figure for that city and for that organization. But Elway has to be on the hot seat. He has just made terrible move after terrible move at the most important position in all of sports.
I think the biggest misconception sometimes with these athletes is that they know what to do in a front office. That's not always the case. I mean, how was Isaiah Thomas as a coach in the NBA? He was horrible.
How's Michael Jordan as an owner?
Exactly. So it doesn't always translate. The one example that we were talking about before was, when you're betting and you lose a couple, you start to chase. I think that's kind of what John Elway is doing with these quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's chasing for the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Flacco will not work out for them. They're not going to win the division. They're not going to make the playoffs. the roster still isn't where it needs to be, and Flacco is just not the answer.
No, and they have a good defense. I think it's frustrating, and you have that taste of success with Peyton Manning, and I think he almost thinks it can be a quick fix. It's not going to be. We talked about Joe Flacco. Him, Andy Dalton, Eli Manning, they're just not the right modern quarterbacks for this league, and I just don't think they're going to succeed with them.
I agree.
So, all right, next topic that was a pretty big headline for this week in the NFL draft. Cliff Kingsbury, the coach for the Arizona Cardinals, who has his quarterback in his eyes in Josh Rosen, he said that he has no interest in drafting Murray, and he's going to stick with Josh Rosen. He's our guy, was our quote. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was very interesting because there's been a lot of talk about Kyler Murray potentially going number 1 after that clip surfaced of him saying when he was the coach at Texas Tech, saying if I had the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, I would take Kyler Murray. Well, now he does have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft a few months later.
Crazy.
And
Crazy
Murray is, now we know, is playing football, so he is on the board. But he came out and said he's committed to Rosen. After watching Rosen his first year, a lot of people will say there wasn't a lot of promising things about him, but he had a defensive-minded head coach. His roster wasn't really where it needed to be for him to succeed.
No.
I think with a young offensive-minded coach like Cliff Kingsbury, even though I didn't see a lot of Cliff Kingsbury, and you did, and that's where I want your perspective on how you think he is going to help Rosen progress in his second and third years in the NFL.
Why, thank you, Teach. You know I'm a big Big 12 guy, and I really did watch guys like West Virginia, Oklahoma, and Texas Tech was one of them. Cliff Kingsbury had to deal with a couple situations this year. He had a couple injuries. He runs that air raid offense. It's going to be really interesting how they work with Josh Rosen because, I would see somewhere in the middle of, you're not going to see like an Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes type of offense, but you're not going to see some mainstream Kirk Cousins bootleg offense. You're going to see somewhere in the middle. I'm very excited for Kingsbury to work with Rosen, and I love the comment he made that he said that he is our guy. It reminded me of when Sean McVay came to LA and Goff had his horrible year. I mean, let me read you Jared Goff's stats, okay, his rookie year. 0 of 7 overall as a record. Then he 5 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. McVay came in and he said, he is our guy. We're not going anywhere different. Look at Josh Rosen last year. 3-10, 11 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I'm looking forward to what they do, and I thought it was the right comment for Kingsbury to make because, let's be honest, I mean, Rosen was a top pick in this draft. You can't give up on your quarterback after 1 year unless you're John Elway, I guess, in this case.
Well, like we said on the podcast, that out with the old, in with the new. It's a copycat league in the NFL.
Yes.
Give me the young offensive-minded coach, Kingsbury, pair him with Rosen. You got a few years at it. You saw what Steve just said with Jared Goff. People were calling him a bust after one season with Jeff Fisher. He was 0-7, had more interceptions than touchdowns.
The quarterback killer.
The quarterback killer, absolutely. So now you get Rosen. Let him see what he could do with Cliff Kingsbury and the new offense that he's going to implement.
And I, we talked about it before with Sean McVay. I don't know if Kingsbury gets this job if McVay wasn't this successful. When you are able to succeed at that young of an age, I mean, that is the new thing now with coaching. They want to bring in the new millennial, and even with baseball, they've moved towards the analytics. They love guys like Sean McVay. So, he gets the job at USC as an offensive coordinator. And didn't he have an under 500 record at Texas Tech?
He was under 500 at Texas Tech. He got fired. Was within 2 months, he went from fired to the offense coordinator at USC, and now he's a head coach in the NFL. So a lot of people are scratching their head of how could you upgrade after being fired?
Yep.
But it's just the new way the NFL is. They're looking for these coaches who have these new philosophies on offense, who really spread the ball out. It's an offensive league. All the rules in the NFL favor the offense. So get these guys who really know how to coach offense in there, and then you let your old defensive coordinator handle the defense.
Couple of things. I mean, I think we both agree when you have a rookie quarterback, you want to get an offensive-minded coach in there. With Sam Darnold, it didn't make sense with Todd Bowles. I'm happy with what they did with Adam Gase. You want to do a similar thing with Josh Rosen. And we looked around the league. I mean, you look at the top coaches in this league, a lot of them are offensive type of minds. Sean Payton,
Andy Reid.
I mean, there's a bunch of guys.
Peterson,
Doug
Frank
Peterson.
Wright. The list goes on.
Teej helped me out here. That is the trend that we're going towards in the NFL. Funny thing about Cliff Kingsbury is, though, he did cut Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
And he did work with Patrick Mahomes, though. So, he has a track history of, you can say, okay, he's capable of developing a pretty young quarterback.